You're listening to Nutrition Matters Podcast with Paige Smathers, registered dietitian nutritionist. Hey everyone, it's Paige, your favorite nutrition podcaster and dietitian. Nutrition Matters Podcast explores what really matters in nutrition and health with a sensitive and realistic approach. This podcast relies on the support of listeners like you and needs donations to keep this project running. To help support the podcast, please consider making a donation at pagesmothersrd.com/podcast. If you find this episode interesting, engaging, or helpful in your life, please consider donating, sharing with friends and family, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can leave a review about this podcast straight from your podcast app. Search Nutrition Matters Podcast, click Reviews, and then write a review. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Paige Smathers RD if you'd like to have a little more food for thought. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to another episode of Nutrition Matters Podcast. My name is Paige Smathers and I'm your host. And as always, I'm so glad that you're here and excited to share this episode with you today. Today I'm talking with Tori Smedley, who is someone who has a really interesting story about how she found intuitive eating and body positivity and kind of her unique struggle in her own recovery from a health issue that kind of intersected with her finding intuitive eating. So in this conversation, we dive into her journey with developing a healthier relationship with food while also navigating how to heal from a very intense chronic illness. And so she shares her story kind of from start to finish. And not that she's finished, she's still in the middle of things, but kind of up to where she is now. And you're going to love this. She has such a great perspective on how to apply intuitive eating when there's other concerns going on in life, when maybe there's an ability concern, or maybe there's a concern with some type of chronic health condition or an illness or some type of health scare. Because, that can kind of make you feel like maybe intuitive eating isn't for me when you have a struggle that's all encompassing with your health. So listen in if you've ever felt like you could relate to that, or if you know someone who is struggling in one way or another with their health and maybe has some objections to intuitive eating, this might be a helpful resource for them. So I want to just make sure that all of my listeners know that I am now taking long distance clients, just a few. And so if you're interested in applying to be a long distance client, head on over to pagesmothersrd.com, hover over services and click on individuals, and then scroll down about halfway and there's a button to fill out an online application to be a long distance client. If you've ever wanted some one-on-one help and feel like you appreciate the approach I take, or if you need a little bit of extra help in learning how to navigate that for your own specific situation and life, feel free to check that out, see if it might be a good fit for you. I'd also like to invite you to join us on Facebook if you'd like to. So that's Nutrition Matters Podcast Community on Facebook. We'd love to see you there. And then also my online course is another resource that's available that if you'd like to take healing your relationship with food to the next level and kind of aren't sure how to do that, you might enjoy my podcast. Of course, you're enjoying the podcast, you're here, but check out the course. So that's pagesmothersrd.com/course. And just read the info page there, see if it might be a good fit for what you're looking for, or a good addition to your own journey towards more peace with food in your body. And check it out. All right, so with that, let's get into my conversation with Tori Smedley, who is a University of Utah student here in Salt Lake City, local to me, who reached out to me, someone who listens to the podcast. And she reached out to me wanting to share her story and also talk about some of the unique struggles of people who struggle with chronic illness and or the autoimmune disease community as well. So even if you don't feel like you have that in your life, I really think that her story is compelling and really, really interesting. And she has some awesome insights from her own experience and also going back to school now to become a dietitian. So that's that's where we go with this conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Tori, welcome to Nutrition Matters podcast, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Paige. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Me too. I'm so glad that you reached out with a willingness to share your story, and I'm excited to see where this conversation goes, because I think that this is something that a lot of people can relate to, and sometimes can kind of make people feel like they're on the outside of this whole kind of intuitive eating, sort of connecting to your body, being gentle with yourself. Sometimes when you struggle with a really serious and life-threatening health condition, you kind of feel like, oh, well, maybe that isn't for me, you know? And so this conversation is an effort to sort of help people see how one person has kind of navigated that semi-tricky territory. Does that kind of sound fair in terms of what we're aiming to do today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's important, especially for people who maybe feel like they don't fit in to this intuitive eating realm, that they do, and that even when hard things happen, it's okay to still listen to your body. So I think it'll be really important too.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's just kind of help people get to know you a little bit and talk about growing up, talk about what food was like at home and body image, and just kind of start from the beginning. Tell us about that. Okay.
So easy. I grew up in a great family, a loving family. I just have a younger sister, so it was just, the four of us growing up, and I had good influences everywhere. As far as eating goes, we had great meals. We sat down as a family every night. It was wonderful. But I do think it's hard. I can't blame anybody, but diet culture is real, and it was especially real when I was younger. And so I would hear, my mom and her friends talk about it, and I would see it on TV, and so I think I just got exposed to it, just like everybody else.
What would you see, like weight loss messages, or what do you mean?
Yeah, probably just like weight loss, and like watching different kids shows. You probably see like thinner bodies and wanting to eat healthy, and I don't know, you probably just like innocently exposed to it and not realizing it. Yeah. But it was quickly, I think at an abnormally young age, that I wanted to be in a different skin than I was. And I wasn't, as a kid, I loved things that required a lot of strength. So I was a gymnast, and I loved to dance, and I grew into loving to run and do sprint training. And so I needed a lot of muscular strength for that. And as I did well at those things, my body looked different than my peers because I was a little bit stronger, and I soon realized that wasn't what the world wanted me to have. And so I would start doing, at a really, really young age, I would go, and downstairs we had some exercise equipment, so I would try and exercise and run on the treadmill. I can't even think of what age I was, probably like starting at like 8 or 9. It just started really quickly. So I developed a negative body image very quickly, and my mom was really good at seeing that and being alarmed by it, and so she did everything a mother could do right about trying to help me. But in my head, it was just something that I dealt with, and it was hard for me to accept that how my body was okay. So anyways, growing up, I got into, as it got worse, it got significantly worse as the years went on, and I would say I started having disordered eating habits probably around 12, and started taking out foods, important foods, and then developed I think what the first time it happened was in school. In like your first health class in 7th grade, they teach you about eating disorders as one of the chapters, and you learn about all the eating disorders, and they're terrible, and how bad they are, and what they are. And when I learned those details, I realized like I could manipulate food in a way that might make me be what I match the world in thinness or whatever. So I tried to restrict my food as much as I could, and I did that for as secretive as I could. And my mom picked up on it quick. She was not about to let me go down that road, and she was really encouraging, would sit me down and try and talk to me, but I just wasn't ever in the right headspace. And so I started purging my food instead, because I figured that would be the easiest way for her to not know, or for anybody to know that I was not letting food. I was trying to at least be in control of my food, to try and be in this body that I thought was the right body. So I suffered from bulimia, and an extreme level of bulimia, very quickly and early in life. And it makes me sad to think about it, but that was a few years, and my brilliant parents caught on, and I still remember it was Valentine's Day of, like, I can't remember if I was in high school or if it was my ninth grade year, somewhere in between there, but they had sat me down, and I was eating candy hearts, and they came in, both of them came in and asked me how I was feeling, and they said, we know what you're doing, and they told me, trying to be very loving, like, let's get help, we need to do something. And I was just like, no, I like this. I felt empowered by it. Like I was in control, and I didn't want to get help.
How did you react when your parents were approaching you? Like, did you feel love from them? Did you feel like defensive? Did you feel angry? Like, I guess this
totally
could be a
defensive.
good opportunity for parents to kind of, hear what might have worked well, or what might have worked if they had done something different, just a learning opportunity.
Yeah, I was 100% defensive. It was not
You're
like
also
I was
a teenager.
in a very, yeah, exactly.
You can't really win, right?
Or like I was a teenager and already in a very unhealthy headspace. Both of those made it so I was very angry. It just was not something I wanted to do. I didn't want to give this up. I felt like I was giving up my control, and then I had all these fears along with it. Like, I'm going to have to eat again. That means that I'm going to have to keep food in my stomach. Like, what? That was just the most traumatic thing I could think of at the time, So it was not a happy feeling, thinking that I had to now go get help. So they did, and we went and searched for counselors and rehab places and just things to try and help me, because it was just a very, very bad headspace. And we found a few and decided not to stick with a few. But the one individual who really helped me more to see that I was of value, but was just more of like a counselor for eating disorders, not necessarily a dietitian. And so he didn't really help my relationship with food at all. But I finally, after a long time of seeing him, kind of saw, like, I do have value. I don't need to do this.
How did he get through to you as a teenager? Like, how did you... can you articulate anything that worked well for what he said, or what really resonated with you? Because I feel like that's a really profound lesson for a teenager to learn, and good job to that counselor for helping you see that.
I know. I can't even think, because I don't know if it's just the way he approached it, and just, he would sit and just validate me, like, yes, like, that's real. That's a real feeling, to be scared of this particular thing, and that's why you don't want to eat, and that's why you don't want food to stay in your stomach. And I don't know. So he probably was just super validating, and I was like, okay, like, it's okay that I felt this way. Not that it's a good thing, but, instead of like, no, this was a bad thing, you shouldn't have done this. And so he probably was just super validating and just loved me. And I don't know. Yeah, that's probably all I can think of. I don't even know how he got through to me.
But somehow that's what you took from it. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you need someone other than your parents to tell you that too, or to help you see that, because of course your parents love you, blah, blah,
right.
For hopefully most kids know that about their parents. I know some parents don't convey that, but yeah, I think all of us listening, have some power in kids' lives around us to help them see that, to help kind of like be a mirror image of, and reflect back to them, like, how wonderful and worthy and beautiful and amazing they are. And kids need that from people other than their parents. So I think, I don't know, I like that. I like that you had that experience as a teenager, but that's not the end of the story. So keep going.
Right. So I finally felt like I had worth, but I still was very much a disordered eater. So that part never healed. Which is no fault to the counselor. How does he know how to, that he did the best he could, So probably like high school years, I started, I loved running. That was my favorite thing in the world, and swimming. So I was on those teams at school. By this time, I had started to exercise at extreme levels. And my mom would say things like, oh, do you think that you need to exercise this much? Do you think that that's good for your body? But she didn't want to be like, don't exercise, but I think she could pick up pretty quick that I was overdoing it on the exercise department. But I would wake up at the crack of dawn before school started at like 4:20, go out for a 7-mile run, get back to school, take an aerobics class in school, then have practice after school, and then do like a lifting session. And it was just on the time. And I would go home and have to be that perfect eater. So I would eat like an apple and peanut butter and some cottage cheese for dinner. Or like if my mom made something with bread, I wouldn't eat the bread because, all I knew was that carbs were bad or whatever. So the disordered eating was still very much there. But I felt like, I was in good headspace. I didn't ever want to go down that eating disorder path again, but I was very still disordered eating, and I didn't see that I was.
And you were over exercising,
Yes.
I mean, so maybe there wasn't the awareness around the food as a problem. Is that what you're saying? Like you thought that was normal?
Yeah,
to like
that was totally normal.
eat?
I totally thought that was totally
normal.
And
how did you feel? Like looking back, did you feel good, energized? Like you had enough energy to keep up with what you were doing, or were you a moody son of a gun?
Yeah, for sure. And during school, I mean, I still do this just because life is exhausting, but to the level of high school falling asleep in class, it was just like, that was just a reality. Like I knew how to fall asleep in class because I was always exhausted.
Do you think that was nutrition
I didn't care
related?
about that. I think it was both. I was exhausting my body and I was not feeding it near what it needed with all that exercise and being a teenager. Hello, you need food.
Yeah.
So,
and rest
rest, which was not getting.
We all fell asleep in school regardless of
right,
if we weren't eating enough. But I think that's gotta play a huge role in your ability to focus and be a good student and remember things and get along with people. I mean, your brain in and of itself needs a bunch of calories in a day just to function, let alone the rest of your body and keeping up with your physical activity. So you were for sure not meeting those needs, and it was affecting you in lots of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely it was.
Okay, so keep going. Tell us what happened next.
So through high school, that was pretty much the same gig. I graduated high school, still exercised. I got into cycling because my dad was a cyclist and loved that still. And so I got into triathlons, and I was doing really well during my high school track years. I had won awards, and then I got really good at running and had started running races and got some awards that way and triathlons, and just decided that this is what I love. And around 19 years old, I decided to go serve an LDS mission for my church, and I went to Arizona. So I went on this mission obsessed about food and perfect eating and exercising, which is kind of hard for a missionary, but I tried to make it work. So while I was in Arizona, it was a fabulous experience, but I definitely was not a normal eater. And oftentimes we would eat at other people's houses, and I would be like, nope, sorry, can't have your dessert. It's bad for me. I wouldn't say that. I would make up things like I'm allergic to sugar, or it was just, it was not good. But
so really
I was
quick,
very disordered eating.
Tori, since we're in Utah and we might have some listeners who will relate to what you're saying and maybe have been on missions themselves, or maybe some people who are like, what is she talking about? What does that mean? And what is it like? I think it's important to kind of set the stage of life as a missionary, and then also like pressures you're under and things people talk about before you leave. Like kind of what I'm thinking is there's so many conversations before you leave of like, oh, you're going to gain so much weight. Be careful. I've even heard of someone's mom saying, oh, you're about to leave on your mission. I can't believe I haven't taught you yet how to diet. Okay, here's how you restrict. I can't believe as your mother, I've waited 19 years or what, 20, 21 or whatever years to teach you how to diet. So here's what you do if you want to, drop some pounds or whatever. And it's astounding some of the cultural things around missions. So just take a minute to explain what that was like for you.
My gosh, Paige, that is such a good thing to bring up because that is so real. It's all people talk about before, during, other missionaries talk about how much they've gained, how much they've lost, what they're doing to try and maintain that. It's super obsessive because that's all you hear. I mean, missions are a great thing beside that, but that is definitely a culture thing within the missionary realm that because you have your day structured for you on how you go out and talk to people and things like that. So you don't have a specific time where you can be like, okay, let me run for 3 hours. You can't do that unless you wake up at 2:00 in the morning. So I would wake up as much as I could, and you stay with your companion, the person who you're designated with to go teach about the things that you're teaching about. And I would make them like ride their bike while I ran or things like that. I'm sure they all hated me, and hopefully they listen to this and know that I'm sorry. But it was just a very obsessive behavior. But that is definitely a culture that you're pressured to not gain weight, and sometimes
it's kind of like going
regardless.
away to college where, I remember everyone saying like, careful, those, the freshman 15. I mean, everyone loves to talk about these things. And all it does is like create all the more awareness and fear and anxiety around weight gain, which, let's be honest, when you're 18, you probably will gain a little bit of weight compared to what you were doing when you were in high school and still, like kind of in like a little girl body versus a woman body, right? So let's face it, your body will change on a mission when you're doing very different things than regular life. And I think that this is something we don't think much of. We don't think much of, saying, hey, teenager going off to college, like, careful not to gain weight or whatever. But I think we need to get into the mindset of someone who's hearing that, not just from you, but maybe from 100 other people. And for a very kind of driven, motivated, successful person and personality, that can really build up and really cause some issues around food and bodies. So, and missions for some reason seem to be sort of like a crucible of like, it explodes at some point for a lot of, I mean, even guys, but for a lot of women as well. Like it's not rare for a female missionary to come back from her mission just in the throes of a really, really intense eating disorder. And I think it's a problem that we don't talk about, but we've got to shift the way we talk about missions. We've got to shift the way we talk about going away to college, and just stop obsessing about weight as if that's the only thing to talk about before someone leaves.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. It makes it really hard to function normally when the only thing you're thinking about is what you're going to gain or what food you have to eat to make sure you don't. It makes it really hard.
And envisioning, coming back, and for those of you who don't know about Mormon missions, like you don't see your family for a year and a half or 2 years unless you're talking on Skype twice a year, and so the fear of I get off that plane and I look like I've gained weight and people will comment on it, for a lot of people is like literally unbearable. It's I would rather do all kinds of unhealthy things to myself to avoid that ridiculously uncomfortable potential situation. And men are not immune to this either. This happens to a lot of men on their mission as well. And so, so anyway, I digress a tiny bit, but I just think that that's an interesting thing that a lot of people maybe aren't aware of or don't think about, is how much our obsession about comments before people leave for, humanitarian things. I'm sure this happens in that case too. Oh, you're going to that country. Oh, you'll for sure gain weight, or oh, your mission, or oh, college, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of that, and I think that that's just not helpful. So keep going.
Oh yeah, definitely not helpful. Okay, so mission was great, did great things, met great people. So I was scheduled to come home September 15th of 2015, and August 29th. I still remember the days vividly, but I started to have weird chest pains on the morning of my run that I was doing, and it got significantly worse throughout the run, and it kind of felt like the only way I can describe how terrible these pains were is it's like somebody was holding a knife into my chest and just like keeping it there. Like, it was so bad I couldn't breathe very well because it was so painful. And it was such a bizarre feeling. So I went to the Instacare. The Instacare doctor took an x-ray and there was nothing there. And so he was like, you have shingles. And I am grateful for doctors, but in my heart of hearts, I knew I did not have shingles. There was something else going on. But that's, he did the best he could. That's all he could come up with. So he gave me steroid shots.
And by the way, shingles hurt really,
yes.
really bad. So
yeah, so it was, that's all he could think of that this was, which is totally valid. But I was like, I just don't think that this is shingles. So a week went by, and throughout that week, I started to have fevers and like ridiculous amounts of fevers that wouldn't go away. I would have to sit in ice baths to just get them down. I started to have no appetite. I was sick to my stomach all the time.
That was so scary.
Oh, it was so bizarre, and it just went downhill so quickly. Yeah, it was really hard. But I had a good friend that I had met on my mission. She was with me the whole time, so she just kind of mothered me and would stick me in an ice bath. So I couldn't eat. I couldn't go out for my morning runs, and that was really frustrating. And I was just getting sicker and sicker by the minute. And so after a week, there was a nurse who came and helped some of the missionaries, and she would come and check up on me, and she was like, okay, this following Saturday, we went back to the Instacare, and he was like, let's take another x-ray and see if something changes. So he took another x-ray, and I still remember sitting in the x-ray room with him. He did the x-ray, and then like across the room, the x-ray showed up on this screen. And I just remember it started like at the bottom, like of my waist, and then all the way up to the top of my shoulders is what the x-ray was. And I remember watching as my lungs would come up. You couldn't see them. It was like a cloud over my lungs. It was the most bizarre thing. And I knew something was wrong because he sat there for probably 2 minutes. And that was a long 2 minutes.
Was that like the first time he had seen it? He was looking at it just with you and was like, whoa.
What is this? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's the first time he had seen it. He was just staring at it like, I don't even know what's... Oh, and this day I had gone... the pain had come back, and it was significantly worse, and so I could barely stand up. Oh, it was terrible. Gosh. So the nurse of the mission just took me straight to... He wanted a CT scan, and it's on Saturday, so nobody's open for CT scans except for the emergency room. So went to the emergency room, got a CT scan, rolled in, just bawling my eyes out because I'm in so much pain. Trying to get a CT scan laying down was almost the most impossible thing on the planet. But so they did the CT scan, stuck me in a room and with this companion friend of mine, and just sat there, me thinking like, okay, I'm going to go back to our apartment and just like sleep until whenever I go home. So this is probably like September 5th or 6th or something like that. And a nurse came in and was like, she told me I was super sick and had to stay in the hospital. And it's not what I was planning on. I just thought this was, some kind of weird flu or some pneumonia, some bug. But they had no idea what was going on with me. So throughout that night, I had been moved to a different room in the hospital. And while I was in the hospital, I had gone even more significantly downhill. And the doctors, I had the best of the best infectious disease doctors there within the day, and pulmonary doctors because something was wrong with my lungs, obviously, and they had no idea what was going on. So long story short, throughout the course of being in the hospital, I was there for about 8 days, and or maybe it was around a week, something like that. I was the most severe patient in that hospital, and nobody had any idea what was wrong with me. So I had an IV on both arms, the the IV things that they hang up above you. I had 8 different medications going through me because they just were like, maybe she has tuberculosis and staph, and just all they didn't know.
So they were
So they were
throwing like
running
every
tests.
medication at you.
Yeah, because they were like,
What
whatever it
city
is.
was this?
This was in Gilbert,
Gilbert.
Arizona. Yeah.
Okay, so that's close to Phoenix, right? That's like a suburb of Phoenix, or no?
Yeah, it is a suburb. It's more of a suburb of Mesa.
Oh,
It's
of
about an
Mesa.
hour away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't really know Arizona, but
No, that's okay.
was this like a good medical center with like really good
Yes.
infectious disease docs
Yeah.
and everything? Okay.
And they had them come in from different places too.
Okay, because they were
So it
like,
was,
okay,
this is
look at this
seriously
case.
an
We don't know
issue.
what's going on with this case.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was being tested for a whole bunch of things. A lot of the tests took a couple of days to figure out, but they were like, okay, so you don't have staph, but we're still going to give you staph medicine because I have no idea what this is. And I remember like my arms were red on fire and I was sick to my stomach, like so sick, could not keep anything down, ate ice for the whole 8 days that I was there or whatever. It was just so bad. And I was put on oxygen because there was fluid building up around my lungs, and my lungs I was in pain. I couldn't breathe very well. I constantly had to monitor to see my breathing rate, if I had enough oxygen, and I never did. So I was always on oxygen.
Did you like think you might die? Like when you were
Oh yeah.
were you like, okay, am I about to die?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it was a level of pain that you can't articulate very well.
Yeah.
And so, but because of that level of pain, I was like, I'm cool with leaving right now. It would be okay because I'm over this.
Were your parents notified, and did they come?
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah, they
and
were
fly
they were
down,
notified.
Okay.
They were going to fly down, but I had tons of people. I had stayed in somebody's house, and they kind of mothered me while I was there. So she was like, if something serious happens, like you fly down for sure, but she comes home in a week, just let me mother her. And I felt totally comfortable with that. And so she just stayed with me and was kind of like my surrogate mother. And then my mom just stayed, and we talked every day. We called her every day.
Gave her
There's
the
a
update.
president over the mission. So yeah, I just talked to my parents every day and let them know, and doctors talked to them. So there was a lot of communication. So
Okay.
they weren't totally out of the loop there. They just didn't come because they didn't feel the need. Because I had somebody here with me, basically.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, so when did they finally diagnose you?
So it was miraculously the 14th of September. I went home, or I'm not home. I went back to our apartment. They, after a series of medications, they realized all of a sudden I had enough levels to be able to make it on a plane home. So I went back to.
But they still didn't know what was going on with you.
They
8
still
days
had
in
no
the
idea what was
hospital,
going. They had no idea. So they just sent me home with 1,000 medications of the
Wow.
same things they were putting in my IV to just take. So I went home with this individual who I had stayed with throughout my mission, and I just stayed with her, and then she took me the next morning to the airport with the other missionaries to go home. And so I got home, and it was walking through the airport, I remember, was so difficult. And I remember watching people just walk through the airport, and I don't have enough, at this time, I didn't have enough lung capacity to even stand up on my own. And I remember thinking, they have no idea how good they have it to just be able to walk. And like, your lungs work so you can walk, things you take for granted that you don't realize.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting. But so I went home, and things probably got a little bit worse. But sorry, I forgot to tell you. So we found out that the 14th of September, when I was at this individual's house, and they had called her and said the valley fever test for coccidiomycosis came back positive. So that's what it is. And that's what that is, from my understanding, and they warned us about it too when we went to Arizona. It's an infectious disease in the pores of the dust in Arizona. It's kind of in a lot of Spanish areas. People contract it, and it acts like, some people get it and it's like a bad cold. Some people get it and it's like a 2-week pneumonia, but they eventually get over it. And some people have lasting effects. But I got, when I came back to Utah, I got great doctors, and they found me the best of the best who could, because a lot of doctors up here don't really know what that is because it's not around here. So they found me doctors that did know, and they one of the infectious disease doctors who really helped me kind of basically told me that the reason it affected me so adversely was that my body wouldn't make antibodies for it because of my genetics. My dad's from an Asian country, and I inherited that gene of fighting infections, and I couldn't fight this disease. So it affected me so badly
It was
because we
like wrong
basically had to
time,
fight it.
wrong place, wrong genetics
Right,
kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to fight it with medicine instead of my body helping me out. So that's why it was so bad. So
Do you think like all the medications they threw at you probably, I mean, not saying that that was wrong to do, but just it probably was really hard on your body to have like, I mean, steroids and like one thing on top of another, like your body's just like, whoa, like that's hard. That's a lot.
yeah. Oh yeah, it was definitely hard.
Okay,
But
pause really quick. I want to hear what was going on with like with your thoughts about food and
oh
body
yeah.
image when you weren't able to eat at all and when you were so sick and when you were almost feeling like maybe I'm on my deathbed. Like what was like, is there any insight into what was going on there?
Yeah. So I couldn't eat because I was so sick, but I was still very much in a disordered eating mentality. And I remember somebody had brought in these delicious rolls and I wanted them, but then I was like, they're bread. I can't eat bread.
So
After I
even there,
had not even eaten for
wow.
like 5 days, it was really bad.
So there
So
was like some like part of your brain, even in that survival mode, that still was like trying to cling to your
yeah.
rules. And even you mentioned earlier that you were really kind of almost mad that you couldn't exercise when you were really sick. Like, I mean, looking back, is that just like so like that's
Oh,
just
so
like,
silly.
come on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ugh. But
Like there were so many
it's a
other important
reality.
things to worry about at the time, and
Right,
that's
right. Like
what I chose to
survival.
worry about. Like, let's live through this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And so when I got home, I was still having a hard time um, adjusting to eating normal. And I remember sitting in the hospital, and I could just, so like I had said before, I liked to exercise, and so I had kept my body at, a good strength, and I could watch like my legs were getting smaller, my arms were getting smaller, and I could just like feel that my strength was dying just like hour by hour by hour because I was so sick. My body was working so hard to try and fight such a bad infection, and so I I was losing a lot of muscle, a lot of everything that I had, any sustenance that I had in my body.
Yeah.
It was losing very, very quickly. And as I got home, it kept losing. It was just like an out of control um, amount of uh, weight that I had lost, not intentionally by any means, just because I was so, so sick. And something interesting. So this is probably a few months after so maybe around December, I was at a very alarmingly low weight, and I was, I guess what you would say, like quote unquote emaciated. And I remember being, years before wanting to be this way and thinking like, I can't even, so I had my husband right now, we dated prior to being missionaries and came home and we're still dating, and he has like lots of big trucks, and he would have to pick me up and put me in his trucks, put me in the car. I couldn't bend down, I couldn't squat because I had nothing to my bones to help them at all. So I remember thinking, this is not, how could I have wanted this,
Oh.
because this was out of my control, and I'm like this, and back then I wanted this, but now I'm like it, and I wish I wasn't, and
That is a
I can't do
profound thing.
anything.
That is a
Yeah.
profound point that I just want to highlight. And I hear this sentiment a lot in my office where people will say, I've, for one reason or another, ended up with the body that I always thought I wanted. And it was so not what I had been sold that it is, right? Like the reality of living in that body was, hours in the gym or being super sick or not eating enough or being unable to do normal human functions because of the restriction you're engaging in or whatever. And just
Yeah.
realizing like, wait a minute, this isn't really this shouldn't be anyone's goal. But, and then a lot of people will articulate too, like, I wish I would have just appreciated my body when things were functioning well and when I could run and move and eat and do all of that without all these limitations, So,
Yeah.
I mean, what else would you add to that?
Oh, I think you're totally right. I mean, I think it's hard for people who don't have eating disorders to realize the place you have to go to in your head to inflict an eating disorder upon yourself, and to have to come out of that and then have to be in a body that you wished you had when you were that sick mentally, and now you're just sick physically, and it's just such a hard thing for your head to try and I don't even know like how to even put it into words.
It's a really, really sobering reality, right? Where you realize this is what I wanted, and I literally almost died, and here I am, and why have I been wasting away my life pursuing this? I don't know. I just think that's something I hear in my office that I wish more people would hear as a message. Like, appreciate your body, because hopefully it works pretty darn well, and there's so much to be grateful for, and there's the ability to get up out of bed and do what you need to do that day, and regardless of what your body looks like or really how you like feel about its appearance, like it functions. I mean, I can't assume that about everybody listening, and I'm sure that there are people listening who have various reasons why maybe something doesn't work as you'd hope or as you'd wish, or maybe someone's going through some things in that regard, but I'm sure those people feeling that way would agree, like, appreciate when your body does function,
Oh yeah, I do know. And I wish, looking back, you can't change the past, and I'm grateful for the things that I've learned, but that is definitely a sobering thought, like you said, to think, I was in this state and that's what I wanted. So I'm grateful for a functioning body.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you were really sick. You were kind of feeling like you couldn't really do much on your own. You had to be lifted up into a truck. You couldn't really walk. I mean, you were just kind of
everything.
In healing mode, right? Full on healing mode, not doing school, just kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got home for the first probably 6 months. It was really difficult because like you said, I couldn't do a whole lot for myself. I couldn't make myself breakfast. I was starting to get, so this infectious disease doctor, I would attribute all of being alive today to her, because she did so much good. But she took off all of the meds that I was on that the doctors gave me, and just gave me one antifungal infection, because that's what it is. It's a fungus growing, basically. So she just put me on the antifungal, and I started to have hunger cues again, and starting to get hungry, and I wasn't just sick.
And were you like really hungry with all that?
I was so hungry.
The pendulum swung into like, okay, now it's time to make up for all this time that you've been
absolutely.
So sick. How did that make you feel? Like, that kind of scary? I mean, I would assume that's kind of scary to feel that hungry.
Oh yeah, it was terrifying, because still in the headspace that I was, even though I was so frail looking, it still was hard for me to accept that I would need to gain weight to be healthy again. So that was a hard thing for me to accept. So I didn't love where I was, but I also didn't want to see the number on the scale rise. And that was a terrifying thing for me, because that relationship with the scale never really changed. But I needed to eat, and I started to eat things just rapidly, because I was hungry and I couldn't function very well if I got really sick when I didn't eat, because I was to a level of hunger that I'd never experienced. So I started to eat normally, and I could see like my body started to look normal, but people noticed, and it was obvious that I was sick. You could look at me in a store and be like, there's something wrong. But people would come and people that my family knew, or they would come and, you know, give me their drinks, their shakes, this is the diet that is going to work for you. This is how you need to gain weight. People would always say comments like, oh, you just need to eat a cheeseburger. And I hated that more than anything in the world. Like, that's the last thing I need right now. I can't eat a cheeseburger right now. I don't feel good. But, you know, everybody always had a remedy. And that was so hard.
Yeah,
so hard.
I bet.
Everybody, you know, there's just so much in our culture that says, you know, you can heal 100, you can be in 100% control of your body through food. And, you know, people try to come and tell me this is what's going to heal you. This is what you need to eat, 100% coconut, whatever, because that's so much better than eating this, and XYZ was what's going to save your life. And
okay,
so that was incredibly difficult.
This is something we need to highlight too, because this is so problematic it's almost like blaming the victim. Like, okay, first of all, people who do this don't mean it to be this way, right? Like their heart is like, oh my gosh, I love Tori. I want to be there for her. I want to help her in any way I can. I feel so powerless with what's going on with her, so I'm going to offer whatever I can. So I just want to like say that before I kind of be mean. But when you have someone who is ill and you say, hey, here's the simple answer. All you need to do is eat a cheeseburger. All you need to do is drink my magical concoction. It's so offensive to the person who is sick, as if it were that easy. Oh, all I need to do is eat this hamburger? Okay, cool. Like, and the fact that I am still sick means that I'm doing something wrong, right? That's the message that comes across to the person who's sick, right? So I know that people mean well when they do this, but I think we can approach people who are sick a little more sensitively and say, what do you need? How can I help you? Would a meal help? Would it help to talk about what's going on? Can I just sit with you? Can I watch a movie? You know, like whatever. But don't say, oh, all you need to do is this one little simple thing, because chances are these people have really capable doctors and professionals on their team, and probably, you know, your advice and your concoction is probably not going to help things.
Oh, yeah.
Is that fair? What do you think?
Yes. Oh, I think that's so fair. And my family was so good. You know, they were the people I had like aunts and uncles take off work to just spend the day with me, because my
great.
Mom would have to go to work, and you know, people wanted to come be with me because I was kind of lonely. So my family was great supporters. They weren't like, here, you need to do it. But it was just, you know, the other people, or people would send me links like, here's the paleo family blog of why paleo is going to cure your illness, or why you need to be on anti-inflammatory, because I developed arthritis severely after this because it kind of attacked my joints as well. And so there's so much, like, you can type in arthritis in Google and the first thing that comes up is like arthritis diet. So everybody always had, this is what's going to work. This is what you need to do. You are in 100% control. Food is how you can manipulate how your body feels.
Then you're lazy.
Yeah. Or you're doing it wrong, or take out more foods, or no, like dump flaxseed in all of your shakes, and make sure you don't use real ice cream. Make sure you have this pint of $12 organic coconut something ice cream, or that's going to work. That's going to, And so I was bombarded with that at a level that I was not prepared for. I did not understand that was out there, because all I knew was diet culture in like the realm of fitness and weight loss. I didn't realize how severe it was in the world of illness, chronic illness, autoimmune diseases. It's everywhere. And I remember just like searching it and realizing it is alarmingly everywhere. And, but when I was in high school, I started to be interested in nutrition. And so I took college nutrition classes in high school because my high school offered that. And I remember, like, as far as like calories in, calories out, or whatever that we learned, like the black and white principles, I was always like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. But I did know, like, coming into this illness, like these diets, I was at least sane about one principle that I'm not going to try and cut out, or I mean, I guess I was, but I just knew dieting was not the answer. It's because I was disordered eating in that, like, I wanted to only eat the perfect foods, but I knew that cutting out specific food groups. Like I knew enough about the macronutrients that cutting out specific of those was going to be harmful. So I at least knew that much, but I didn't know to like what level it would be and how people believed that that really was the culprit, that the food was the culprit and the food was also the savior. And I just
it's a fungus. It's a fungus,
like,
people.
I'm sorry, but that's not going to work for me.
Okay, that fires me up. But again, people mean well.
Right.
So so what happened next for you?
So this is probably maybe like month 8, 9, and I realized I was in a bad. As I started eating again and being hungry, I realized I was just an unhealthy eater, in that I was not fully nourishing my body. Not only that, but I didn't know how, because I had gone so long not eating or eating just tiny amounts of food. And I realized I was not nourishing my body, and I was always exhausted. Well, my body was going to be exhausted anyways because it's still trying to fight this disease. But I was up and functioning, walking, and trying to, do the best I could to just like move and start acting normal. And I realized I just was not nourishing my body well. So I Googled one day dietitians in the area, and my mom kept being like, you really should just go see somebody who can help you learn how to eat again, who can help you, decide what's best for your body, because it was a hard thing to balance, what the whole world wanted me to know about healing my disease and food and what was actually good for me and what I needed and wanted, but everybody said I couldn't have. So I Googled dietitians in Utah, and Paige, you were the first one to come up. So I just clicked on your website, briefly looked through, and I was just like, I don't even care. I'm just going to make an appointment. So I made one, and I think it was later in March. I think it was our first appointment with each other. Yeah. Does that sound right to you?
That sounds right to me.
March of 2016 or something like that. And I remember coming in and still like not very good headspace, and having this conversation, and you basically gave me permission to eat all the food groups. Like you drew out a plate and you were like, this is what you can actually eat, and this is what's going to make your body feel good. And you told me things like, you're going to feel the best when you're fully nourished. And I never really thought about that, even though that's so simple. But, we get distorted by diet culture. And so saying something that I'm going to feel my best if my body's fully nourished and can use the fuel to properly fight off this disease was like, duh,
Plus, you also, like, it's so important for you to be active, and it was so hard for you to not have, like, to see your strength kind of whittle away with being sick. And you were mentioning, like, I want that strength back. I want to be able to ride my bike and move my body. And I was just like, well, that's not going to happen until you start eating,
Yeah. Yep. It was very clear that I needed to start eating in order to be able to do anything. And I did. I still loved riding a bike, but it was hard for me even to fathom that because my lung capacity was still so minimal at the time. So I would do things like go lift a couple weights to the gym, and then that would be about all I could handle because I just was still so weak, and I couldn't do much when you're fighting a disease like that. So I did as best I could and tried to build up as best as I could, but I'm okay. I don't know if I'll ever be able to be how I was prior to serving a mission, and that's okay with me now. It was definitely hard though at the time because I wanted to be that, and I would go to doctor's appointments and be like, okay, so can I run in 3 months? Do you think it'll be 6 months? Do you think it'll be a year? And I remember her just looking at me like, let's just take it a day at a time.
Yeah.
Like stop thinking about running. There are more important things like surviving right now.
So this whole recovery process was sort of a dual recovery, right? So it was the physical illness recovery, but it also coincided with having to really face your eating disorder. Is that,
oh yeah.
So it was like a big job for you.
Full blown. Oh yeah. That was a very big job because I felt like I wanted to, because I was hungry again and eating again. I didn't like the idea of eating anymore because I had gone so long without eating, and like I had said earlier, gaining weight was super frightening, even though I knew it was necessary. and I knew that it was going to happen regardless. It was just like a hard thing for me to accept was happening.
Yeah. So what kinds of things like started clicking for you? Because you're in a very different place now than, that first meeting, in March of 2016 or so.
Yeah. Well, so I had gone to see you, and then something had come up. I was in school again by this point, and then I got married in June. And right before I got married, I had a PICC line, which was giving me the fluconazole because I had to have large amounts of it at the time. And so she just put in a PICC line to make it a little bit easier. And I ended up getting a blood infection with that PICC line right before I got married, like 2 weeks before I got married. So I got sick again. Like it just was like a never-ending thing for me. And I can feel, I have what's called reactive arthritis now, where to infections, my body reacts. So I get a cold now, and it's like I'm out for days because my joints all of a sudden lock up and flare. And so I knew something was severely wrong, and I was admitted to the hospital. I was in there for, I think, 4 or 5 days, 2 weeks before I was supposed to get married. I think I got out a week before I was supposed to get married, and terrified, sitting there in the hospital, sick again. So I'd gone through it it was just a small illness thing that I had to go through again, but it kind of, flooded back because
it's traumatized. You were like re-traumatized. Don't like to eat.
Yeah, I was re-traumatized. So I got married in June, and then after we got home from our honeymoon and we kind of settled down, I made another appointment for you, I think in July. And that's when I started coming regularly to just start healing. And by this point, I was really ready to just be happy, to be free, to just, I knew I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know what was good for me, and I needed somebody to lay it out for me, black and white. This is what is good for your body, and this is what you need to do, and this is how. And then that's how you introduced listening to my body, and you basically structured my meals so that I would get hunger cues again. And then once I got hunger cues, you taught me how to listen to those hunger cues. And I think that whole process. And then you made sure that, not only was my diet as far as food and what I was eating was starting to be normal again, but that my headspace, was I okay with who I was? Do I need to start like a grateful journal? All these little things to make sure that my all around mental health and physical health were at least benefiting from what I was eating, and that I was feeling good in the body that I was in.
So what started to click? Like hunger cues? Was that scary? Because did they come back with a vengeance? I mean, what?
I can't remember if they came back with a vengeance. Was
it just kind of like, okay, I'm doing this?
They came back. Yeah, I think I was just so ready by this point that I was grateful for my hunger cues, and I ate when I needed to. And over time, I started to be like, okay, like it's okay if I eat ice cream with my husband after dinner. It's okay if I eat this delicious peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I love, instead of eating just peanut butter and apples because for whatever reason.
You read that somewhere online.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how do you what would your advice be for someone who's going through a health struggle or something related? Like, how do you incorporate intuitive eating with a wrench thrown in there, with recovering from a full-blown fungal infection or something else? Like, because we started off this conversation kind of saying sometimes people think, oh, well, that intuitive eating won't work for me because of X, Y, and Z reason. What did that go through your mind? Did you struggle with that, or did you just kind of like go in feet first and do it all the way? Or
I for sure struggled with that because up to this point it's been very clear, in my head, I needed to eat perfectly. So to introduce foods that were to the world not perfect, and that used air quotes there, was hard for me to accept that I could eat that and my body would be okay with that. And luckily, I'm grateful, though, that I did see you as somebody with the credentials to know what's best for me. And also, that I had taken. I was taking a couple nutrition classes at the time in school, and I had taken previously. So I had a good background of good, correct information regarding food. So I wasn't, I didn't go searching for online blogs of how to cure, or I didn't go searching for like wellness coaches who didn't really know a whole lot about nutrition, who just told me I needed a bunch of vitamin C and probiotics and take this supplement. Supplements will be what you need to, I had the background knowledge of what's in the big picture, what's good, and that all foods fit from you. And so it all just kind of meshed together. So I think, for anybody who's going through something like this, just realize it's okay to get help, because I needed extra help to go through what I was going through. I talked to other people too, to make sure that just I was okay all around.
I think the extra hard thing about having like a dual situation go on where you're recovering from some type of illness plus trying to work on maybe your relationship with food, what I think can be really difficult there is the added layer of sort of like guilt or shame about what you're putting into your body. And for a person whose body is functioning just fine, they can see, oh, I can eat some ice cream or some pizza, and I don't really need to like stress about that. And they can kind of wrap their head around that perhaps a little bit easier than someone who has something like what you're going through, where there might be an extra layer of like, if I don't eat perfectly, quote unquote, I might not get better, And so I feel like there is that added layer of like navigating what is the big picture here? What is the real threat to your health? Is it eating a slice of pizza, or is it like not eating enough, period? Because if you're not eating enough, period, you have no chance of healing, right? And the pizza actually might help you get to the adequate amount of food for the day versus a salad or whatever. So that's a really tricky layer that I think we need to talk about, where people struggle when they're navigating two things at once, where they might say, well, intuitive eating isn't for me because, I have this health concern, and so I need to eat, quote unquote, perfectly. I don't know. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah. Oh, I just had a thought come to me. I remembered an experience that somebody shared with me who suffers from arthritis. It was a friend of mine, and she went on this diet to take out, and this can be applicable not just for people with arthritis, but anybody, whether it's just dieting for weight loss or dieting for a disease. She went on this diet that took out so many essential foods and was just very restricting. And she had gotten pregnant by surprise, and this was her second baby. And when she went to the doctor, throughout this pregnancy, as she started eating normal again because she had a baby growing inside her, the doctor was like, wow, you gained more weight this pregnancy than your last pregnancy. And like right when he said that, it clicked with her, like, duh, I've gained more weight. I was eating proportion sizes that could barely feed a bird, and now I'm eating normally. I'm obviously was in an unhealthy place then. I'm going to gain more weight now. And like that, your body compensates, So I thought that was a perfect example that she could share with me. Like, obviously, once you feed yourself, your body's going to do what it needs to with the food. Exactly.
And your body is very, very wise and very smart, and it's going to help get you to where it really thinks you need to be weight-wise, because it's really, really not a fruitful pursuit to pursue manipulating your body. And I actually have this conversation a lot of times with people in rehab about when a lot of the younger men will say, well, how do I gain weight? How do I gain weight? I have to say the same thing. Like, well, you can see what you can do to make sure you're nourished and eating adequately, but really your body's probably going to do what it's going to do. And sometimes you can eat a significantly larger amount of food and not see a huge shift on the scale. And it's interesting to kind of put that in context of weight gain too, because there are people out there who are like, how do I gain weight? How do I gain weight? I can't. I've been teased for being thin or skinny my whole life. I want to be big and I want to be muscular. And, your body's wise, whether it's wanting to stay at a lower weight or wanting to stay at a higher weight. Like it does what it needs to do. And your job is not to manipulate it. It's to take good care of it. And sometimes that means eating pizza and ice cream. And sometimes that means eating a salad. And sometimes that means all different kinds of things, So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I totally associate, for people listening, I totally associate with the feeling of like, I can't eat cheese, or that's going to give me a flare. And then getting a flare, eating perfectly, and thinking that, feeling shame for that, because that means I didn't do the right thing, or I didn't eat the right thing. And so here I'm going to take out more food, or, I can't eat Swedish fish because that's my favorite candy, but that will give me flares. Like, I've been in that headspace. I know what that's like, to feel like what I eat is going to cause a certain reaction, whatever a flare is to your body. And so the best balance that I ever learned was that everything fits in your body. When you put it under stress, like restricting, you're likely to have more flares. Like, I definitely hurt more when I'm stressed. And if you're restricting, that's a stress on your body. You're going to hurt more. And the best I felt is when I've just made it so that everything fits, that I well nourish my body. Yeah, if I only eat a certain type of food group, whether it's a quote unquote good or bad food group that the world deems, whatever it is, if I eat too much of one thing, I'm going to feel it just like a normal person would feel it without a chronic illness. And that flares aren't really contingent upon how we eat, but rather when we're well nourished, we're going to feel so much better than if we weren't.
This is so true. And I think that our culture is a little bit obsessed with tying every feeling you have in your body to food, whether it's like a vague, oh, I'm feeling tired right now. That's probably because I ate, such and such, even though it's like, okay, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? Or I'm feeling really jittery. Okay, how many cups of coffee did you have? Or, it's just kind of funny because we like to kind of say, oh, this stomach ache is because of this, or this flares because of this specific food, when really, if we're being honest with ourselves, it's very difficult to pinpoint, because there are literally thousands of variables in any given day of why your body might be feeling a certain way, why you might be having gas, why you might be moodier, or having a headache, or your stomach hurts. Like, that could be what you ate. That could be anxiety. That could be stress. That could be so many different things. By the way, sometimes you just don't have the answer for why your body hurts, right? And I think it's important to like have a gentle awareness of like trying to say, hey, I'd love to find the patterns here, because obviously nobody wants to hurt and nobody wants to have headaches and stomach aches. But I think we have to be gentle with that and kind of keep that under wraps, because that can get out of control, and you could really go down a rabbit hole with trying to figure out the reasons for everything. And like sometimes I've actually had this in session a lot recently. Sometimes I have to just explain to people like, your body is going to hurt, your body is going to get sick, and you won't always know why. You won't always know the person that gave you that cold, and you won't always know the exact situation that gave you a headache. And that's okay. And the more you try to look for reasons, sometimes it can really be not good.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I just watched Brene Brown on an interview that she did, and she said something like, don't walk through the world looking for evidence you don't belong. Don't walk through the world looking for evidence you're not enough, and because you'll find it. And that's the same with anything. Don't go on the internet trying to find why an anti-inflammatory diet is going to be the reason you don't have flares anymore, because you're going to find it.
Right, and don't go through your world looking for foods that are hurting you, because you'll yes. find them, and it might not even be good, accurate information.
Right.
And it might end up putting you in a worse situation than you were in the yes. beginning. Now, we all know that there are people out there who have legitimate reasons to avoid certain foods. And I'm not trying to say, if you have a food allergy, eat it anyway. Who cares? We're just kind of trying to talk about this pursuit of like answers and cures through food that sometimes sends you down a rabbit hole where you're worse off than you started, and you're more restrictive, and you're more malnourished, and you're more likely to get even more sick because of your physical state. So that's more what we're talking about, not the people who have legitimate reasons, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. I don't want to discredit that. Just the fine balance. And it's just not, I just have found that it's just not worth it to try and spend 90% of my thinking on what I'm going to eat. And it's more important that I just nourish myself and find other things to be happy about, because that's when my body feels the best, is when I'm not constantly worried.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it connects holistically to what we're talking about. Like you feel your best both on a mental and a physical level when you're able to kind of, spend some time and energy on food, because obviously like it's a constant never-ending chore to think of what to eat and to shop for it and to cook it and to prepare it and to clean it up. But to also free up a lot of space in your brain for other things, because that's when humans are happiest, when we have time to go do something just for fun and to kind of let your hair down and have a good time, and then to study really hard and focus really hard and enjoy moving your body and do lots of different things in a day, not just like one thing, obsess about food.
Oh, yes, I totally agree. And I mean, I still have days. I think the best improvement that I've seen is on the days where, I sit in school and I've been really stressed that day because I had a test or something. And so when my body's under stress, I react with different kinds of inflammation. And a lot of times it starts in my hands. So I'll be in like my last class, which is a night class, and be trying to write, and it's hard. And I'll be like, well, that makes sense because I was stressed today. And it's so refreshing to not go straight to, oh crap, it's that sandwich I ate. There's just so much more that goes into how we feel than just food. I mean, food is an important part, but it's not the most important part.
There's so much more to how we feel than just food. I love that. I'm writing that down.
I just think it's so, and what's happening in our quiet moments, we can analyze, how are we actually feeling? Are we really actually worried about food, or are we worried about other things? And
yeah, because
really
sometimes
good to just be able to analyze.
Sometimes it does kind of mask what's really going on, right? It's like an easier thing to blame than like, I'm really stressed out because I got in a fight with my husband, or I'm really anxious because my mom and my relationship is strained right now, or whatever it is. It's easier to say, oh, I have this stomach ache because of that whatever food I ate. And so, yeah, just taking some time to really be honest with yourself and say, okay, it could be that something I ate bothered me, but it also could be so many other things. Let's kind of look at this from like a zoomed out perspective. So I love that. And so to me, that last little segment we did of conversation about how you've been able to incorporate some of these intuitive eating principles into recovery from both situations with struggles with an eating disorder plus struggles with a chronic illness. Is that what you call it? Or how do you like to refer to your...
It was definitely a chronic illness. I mean, I feel like it's more just an autoimmune disease now. It's just, a reaction that I get depending on how my immune system feels.
And it's a remnant of the original infection.
Yes. Yep.
Right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So tell everybody what you're doing now for school.
So I was inspired by Paige to be a dietitian. So I'd always thought that I wanted to, but I just never felt like it would. I was adequate enough because I've been through a roller coaster of eating issues. So Paige inspired me because I was so healed and I feel so happy where I'm at, and so therefore I wanted to do something for somebody else like that, and I love it. It's something I've always taken nutrition classes with what I studied originally because I loved it so much. And so when I decided to change my major to pre-dietetics to get ready for being a dietitian, I was already right there and ready for it. And so it worked out really nicely. So now that's what I study, and I love it so much. It's refreshing to know that the real studies out there with adequate information are what's making me the happiest, that I'm not living off of something that's just a biased opinion, but rather this is really what is the best thing for our bodies. And it's validating every time I sit in class, even if it's just a biology class or a chemistry class, to sit like, yeah, our bodies are capable of doing so many things, and it's okay to trust them to do those things. So that's what
I
I'm
love it.
studying.
And I love that
And
that's
I
being
love it.
reinforced in classes for you.
Oh, yeah.
There will be some times that might be a little triggering just
Oh,
because of
yeah.
the education in dietetics, but I think you'll be in a great place for it, and I'm so excited for you to join the profession and to like use your history in your past as one of your biggest strengths to help people and to empathize with people. I think that's so important and so needed. One question I didn't ask that I want to just quickly sort of get your summary on is what, you and I had to do some body image work in addition to like food work. Like how has that sunk in for you, and how do you feel you are in terms of like, I mean, you just already mentioned you're working. It really makes a lot of sense to trust your body, and you're getting that reinforced in classes. How has that work you've done with body image affected your eating?
Oh, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that is something that has 100% 180 changed for me. Because I was never in a good space of what I thought about my body, and I don't even know when it changed. But I just think over time, little practices of like, it's okay if I allow this fry into my diet because it's delicious and I love it. And little things of like, it's okay that my body's not as strong and built as it was before, because thank goodness it freaking functions. I'm here still, and
Good
I
thing
can
you
walk
had all
around
that muscle
like
to
a
help.
normal person.
Good thing you had all that muscle to help you get through that illness
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Like I can't, it just was. I think I would have been even more sick if I wasn't so built prior to that,
Yeah.
because I just was able to lose all of that rather than whatever else I could have would have been
Heart
detrimental to
tissue.
my body. Yeah, exactly. So I just try. It's just more of a positive light. I think just eating and feeling positive makes me just be able to see everything else
Oh,
positive.
I
Like,
love that.
oh yeah, I have hard days that I'm like, yeah, I see a picture of, how I looked and in my track days, and I'm like, ooh, I wasn't thankful for that body, but like now I wish I could have it. But I'm okay with who I am. And I think the point that I was like, okay, I'm in a good headspace now, was in a nutrition class. We were learning about adolescence and nutrition, and I remember thinking, I don't want we were talking about how kids mimic what we eat, and I remember thinking, I don't want my children thinking that they have to take out X, Y, and Z food to be happy, even though I might tell them that they don't need to. If they watch me do it,
Yeah.
I don't want them to grow up thinking, oh, if I have something wrong with me, I need to bring a salad to family dinner instead of eat whatever
Like
the
my mom
family's eating
does.
or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, exactly. And I remember thinking, this is good. Like, I want my kids to be well-rounded and be able to see that everything fits, that neutrality is good, and that's how our bodies function best. It's not just a good idea, it is really how our bodies function best. And I remember when I thought of that, it just like occurred to me, like, I would not have thought of that before, and that was just a second nature
Yeah.
thought. And so I was like, okay, like, I've made it over little tiny things of just positivity. And it wasn't like one day I was like, okay, today I can eat all of everything. It just was like
Yeah.
allowing things that I didn't allow before, in a little bit by little bit, and it just like made itself into this beautiful image of, I'm okay with who I am, and this is, I'm gonna do my best. And I can ride a bike now. I don't think I'll ever be able to run again, and I'm okay with that, because I'm grateful I can even move, that I can have a happy marriage and still be able to function, go to school, be a dietitian. Like, I didn't lose a limb. There's so many things that I find that I'm grateful for, rather than like nitpicking what I can and can't do, because that's what I would do with food. It's just like, I feel like just affected so much more than just my eating,
And it sounds like what you're saying, if I could summarize, is that, a lot of times I think about how body image is such a crucial foundation to be able to support healthy, well-balanced and a healthy relationship with food. But it sounds like almost for you, it's like the opposite. Like you did some brave things with eating that kind of got you out of your comfort zone with food, that then in turn helped you feel physically better, which then helped you love and appreciate your body more. Does that sound fair? Like you almost found or have been able to harness sort of a sense of positivity around your body based on being more neutral around food. Does that seem reasonable summary?
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
I think so.
I like that.
I absolutely think so.
I like that a lot. And I think that's a good thing for people to hear, that, you don't necessarily have to just like develop this like ridiculously perfect, flawless, bulletproof sense of body positivity in order to like eat healthy and well balanced. And by healthy and well balanced, I mean, gosh, including fun things here and there, and I mean well rounded in terms of all of those things. But maybe starting there and trusting that and learning how to trust your body can then in turn help you appreciate it and be grateful for it and develop a sense of positivity around it. So there's no wrong way to create a healthier relationship with food, however it works for you. And I love your story, and I love highlighting some of the particular difficulties with struggling with food issues at the same time of health issues, or even for you, there was like an ability issue as well that is slowly getting better for you, but still not quite back there. And there's some navigating that has to be done with that too. That's really difficult, something to kind of grieve sometimes, a loss of ability as well. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know that's a big story, and that's a lot of trauma that you experienced, but you're so resilient. You're here on the other side, like excited to be able to study these things and kind of give back. And I'm so excited to see what you do next. That's so fun.
Oh, thanks, Paige. I'm so excited too. And I love it. It feels good. Telling my story to you is probably the most vulnerable I've ever been. I've never actually told the whole, 180 picture, or the 360 picture, I mean, of like how everything came to be. And so hopefully there's somebody out there that can relate to at least part of it. And yeah, I'm just grateful for what I've learned, and that I'm in this place that I can be happy and healthy. So
me too. I'm so grateful for that too. And thanks again for that vulnerability. And I will be sure to send along any feedback I get so that you can kind of see what people say and how it might be affecting them.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks for being here.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paige.
Well, I sincerely hope you've enjoyed this conversation. If you haven't already, please go ahead and leave a review on iTunes. Thanks again so much for listening, and we'll see you soon for another episode.